Welcome to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion to Ragnarok story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
So welcome back to RPGaDay 2018. I won't say the fluff spiel because it's, day 6. We probably heard the fluff spiel enough. We're going to jump to, this is week 2, so all the questions...
That's the German instrument, right?
Yeah, the fluff spiel.
The fluffy spiel.
From the von Spielen spiels, So the questions for week 2 are how, ... So for August the 6th, how can players make the world seem real? This is a great question. I mean, this is like one of those ones that GMs can't tell players to do. This is just one that experienced players just do naturally. And I've got 3 experienced players in this room, Scott, Marjorie, Kelly, that just from the Genesis game, because we came up with that one out of our ass from a setting-wise, we took a rule system, threw a background to it, painted it, had you guys throw in some gap fills of what you wanted in the world, and we made a game world happen just out of our wazoos. Also an instrument. So who would like to go first with how can players make the world seem real?
Well, what I always go with is player consistency. Mm-hmm. And the player has to actually take it as... Well, there's 2 types of players. One person usually plays like a version of themselves in whatever universe it is. And so they're usually consistent. They have their own, they have their own morals, and they have their own goals, and they have that of the character. And then the other person is, an actor type who takes a different role, takes the different affectations, and really tries to get into that character. But with both of those, I think the really important thing to do is just maintain an understanding of who you are in that game. Mm-hmm. Understand that it's not fun if things always go your way. You need to have setbacks. You need to have, not just adversaries, but actual losses in some ways.
The failing forward.
The failing forward types of things. It's the same thing from a good book. A good author knows that there's more character development in what they didn't get than marking something off your list. And just maintaining your own belief in that world as a player is just really the important part.
That's a great one.
And kind of building on that, the thing I was going to suggest is character backgrounds. Is you, before game, you basically set down this character's history, so you have something to draw from, and then each consecutive thing just builds that history even more, but it gives you some type of, like a grounding. And I agree, you have to have the good with the bad.
The highs and lows.
Exactly, because if everything, leaving a good movie, it's like, if everything just there's no conflict, there's no drama. And it's drama that really makes it seem real. I mean, nobody's life has no drama. I'm sorry.
And that's where your character
even
finds
if it's
his
internal
character.
drama. you know.
And understand the choices that your character is making and make them seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a GM, I gotta admit, I love when I hear a player say, I want to do this, but damn it, my character's going to do this. Because they're respecting their character's landscape, because they've got their past, their present, their future.
I know, as a player, this is absolutely horrible, and there's no reason why I should do it. But I gotta do it.
Yeah. It's like one of the audiobooks I listened to a while back. It's Ari Salvatore doing a short story for Drizzt.
Okay.
You know, classic character from Forgotten Realms. He goes into a village, they've captured a goblin. This goblin has done nothing other than have pointy ears and green. So Drizzt gives that whole spiel of, just because he's a goblin, he's not a bad guy. And then, of course, you know, things happen, and then Drizzt responds accordingly, but he lets them make their own decision, and then he responds. So it's one of those of, he's been from a bad background. He knows that not everyone is what their stereotype is. Mm-hmm. So you have to judge everyone on their merit, not their predisposition, race, you know. So that way it shows that his character's arc of he could be a bad goblin, but he hasn't done anything bad, so you give him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I think that's also an important word that you just used, stereotype.
Yeah.
Because you have to be close enough to some type of stereotype someplace to be recognized.
To be comfortable.
I prefer archetype.
Yeah. Or archetype
Yeah,
works as well.
Archetype is great because the hero's journey.
Right, but you also can't be so one note that you don't have additional depth on it.
Exactly, because then you go to like the realm of, and now I hate the saying, but we're in a room full of literary people, the Mary Sue angle. Mm-hmm. I hate the phrase Mary Sue because, you know, it's not just for ladies, you know, but the character that's just there for that one thing, you know.
I think the male version is called Marty something.
Yeah.
AJ would know.
Probably McFly. But yeah, I definitely agree with that one. Is the know where your character came from, so you know where your character will go. Mm-hmm. Which that's always great because you're playing the ROLE in your character because you're playing the character as opposed to playing yourself. Which you can still play a character that is you in a fantasy realm. You just need to make sure to put that skin on of the fantasy world.
Right. I actually used to do a lot of LARPing. I know this is an RPG.
Hey, LARPing is role playing. That's a huge. It's live action role play.
In the spiel that you did not say, it specifically says tabletop. And actually, I was a little bit hurt on that because I consider LARPs RPGs as well.
It is.
But they are.
That's the RP in the LARP.
You know, so one of the things we do is, you know, we'd have a completely new setting once a month. Do throwaway characters so that way we wouldn't be as wedded.
That's always fun.
You know, and just go to it. And so one of the things that I learned doing that is that you need, like I said, you need to be a stereotype, and then you need to have one thing that breaks that rule as a beginning character. You know, and then you start making your choices, and then you can build on that. You know, that's a really quick way to make an interesting character. Is start with a stereotype. So what's the one thing that this character has that isn't part of that stereotype?
Mm-hmm. And that's what makes the world real.
And that's what makes the world real.
Yeah, because it's the I am Bruce Wayne, millionaire playboy, who, by the way, sneaks out at night in a funny bat costume and fights crime. You know, it's you can accept me for 80% of my life as millionaire Bruce Wayne, womanizer, blah, 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 who, by the way, puts on a cape at night and fights crime, you know. So that way you've got that whole, I'm recognizable easily at a glance, so you can get interest. But then all of a sudden, once you start digging deeper, you realize I'm a real individual who's got more levels than just one dimension.
What? Okay, yeah, no, pretty much everything that I was going to say is pretty much covered, but more nuanced, I think the how part of how your player characters can help your fantasy world become real is for them to be really anchored on who their character is and what their motivations are. Specifics and background are great, but those can be filled in as things happen. But really to know, who your character is within the world setting and what their motivations are for going forward. Because quite honestly, the world is populated with people who are more than happy to punch a clock, do their 8 hours, go home, go to bed. But that's not who player characters are.
Yeah.
Player characters don't stay home and raise sheep. They go out and do things. So, you know, knowing why your character wants to go out and do things, what motivates them, what makes them get up every morning and put on their boots and walk and, you know, hit conflict head on, or, you know, do the things that they do is really important. And making your character more real actually contributes a lot to making the world in general more real.
It helps solidify,
Yeah.
because if your part of the world's real, the person sitting next to you can latch onto that and add on to it, especially for a lot of newer and experienced role players who don't feel comfortable. They can see, Scott's character's got this great background, and by the way, can I be interested in your background, so it connects me onto yours, so then I reinforce yours and it reinforces mine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and and communication. I mean, one thing is, as a GM, I'll throw it out there, there's 2 bits. One is communication, like session zeros are great because you guys can talk about, this is what we want, this is what our goals are, this is what the game is. So you can set down okay, so we know that our airship captain, she's a sucker for a pretty face, but she loves to go to the opium dens. So if she misses a game session, we know where she was, which completely makes it solid and real why she's missing. I mean, we immediately, when you miss one game, we immediately kicked in the gear of, we all know where the captain is, because this is where the captain goes. And then, you know, you have something you can grab onto and you can play off each other. Like any good improv group, it's playing off your team. But another one I'll throw out there as a GM is, and this is a big one for GMs, reward your players for putting in the extra effort. Now, I know not everybody can come up with like some players we know, Kelly, who can come up with like a 2-page story every other week on a good week. And some people can just come up with a paragraph, but at least reward your players for coming up with stuff. Now, granted, if they came to the game table and they have nothing, I can see they get skipped every now and then, but reward those who come up with the extra effort and push it in.
Well, you don't want to reward them too much because penalize.
Yeah, you don't want to create a gap.
That have that are not. They don't have the skill set or the even the bandwidth.
But
and frequently the people who are coming up with these 2 or 5 page backstories every week on what they were doing while they were off also tend to be inflexible. And so you need to have the good mix of people who are coming in and able to react as a character, because frequently they're actually more in their role.
They're writing the character.
They're writing the character as they're experiencing it, rather than, this is what he would do. This is what I would do.
Yeah,
and you need to reward that as well.
Yeah, and I do. I have written stories about the characters, but it's literally the character takes on a life of their own. And that's what you need to embrace. I had characters start out one way, and they're completely different by the time. And it's called growth. Exactly.
Yeah. It's called shit happens.
But,
life happens when you're making plans.
Exactly. And so I always try to play it that way. I have my lovable little Tilda who doesn't change a whole heck of a lot, but that's just because she's that happy-go-lucky kind of, even though bad things have happened, she still tries to stay in that, that frame of mind. But I have Trixie, who started out one way, and she's broken now. She is like a shell of her former self. And then I have Val, who was like, one end of
blossoms.
And now she's
been forced to constrain.
Literally.
She was a libertine god of Freya, who now has a child. She killed some other scions of gods, and they basically demanded a weregild of her.
And one of them was where I couldn't kill anybody for a year.
She was super killy. She was throwing her magic dagger at everything that moved.
Because I was just she was part of a biker gang. She was like a libertine. She,
she killed the scion of the Japanese god of life.
Yeah, so he
was bad. In her defense, he was bad. So
he was trying to kill me.
His father accepted that he was a bad seed.
I kind of like.
But she is Norse, so there's a were-guild required.
Right.
Yeah. What is that's not harsh, but what is the punishment? And by the
it was
way,
harsh, but it made this character like, well, I can't kill anything. So
she started throwing her magic dagger in people's feet all the time.
Yeah, or and then we're like,
yeah,
oh look,
it's amazing what you can live through.
And like when we started fighting zombies, I'm like, yes, this doesn't count. I can kill these because they're already dead. But it made her stop to think. I'm like, well, I can't can't just like go out and physically, I have to temper all of her movements, and she had to become more of the healer. Mm-hmm.
She finally actually dropped into her healing role, which she was ignoring for the most part.
Exactly, for the killy. And so that character, and then when she had other were-guilds where she had to do services for these other gods. Mm-hmm.
She butchered a priestess of Isis. She was a total bitch.
She had it coming.
She was a total bitch and sold her soul to evil. But she was doing her job for her mom, which was the ritual. So when there was a priest, she went as the priestess of Isis and did her job. And she basically held on to the priestess garments, did the roles,
her necklace,
and passed it along to the next priestess that was to take the role.
Yeah, so
because all great were-guilds, by the way. I spent time on these things.
Yeah, so this character, and when he mentions the stories, because for each of those were-guilds, there was part of the story was written just to kind of
fill in the gap.
Accept the consequences of your actions.
Because the next time we were supposed to meet, we knew it was going to be a long period of time.
There's time gaps.
So, I mean, it was going to be, her baby was going to be born, which was the other were-guild, because as a libertine, you have to have certain vices. Hers is basically alcohol and sex. She didn't approve of
pure
drugs.
libertine.
Exactly. Those were the things that she needed to regain, So alcohol was off the table. Because not only was I not allowed to kill anything for a year, I now can't drink for over a year because she's pregnant, and I had to do the service to Isis, and there was one more.
Sober.
Sober. And because one of the other characters was that she was a dancer, and from her mother, Freya. Because she can't dance.
She kind of screwed her mom over because they had a magic item that if you wear and spend a point of legend, you can steal your divine parent's powers.
But I had no idea.
She didn't realize that. All she knew is I threw in the flavor text of she hears a woman's voice screaming in the distance that sounds really familiar. What it was about 300 miles south in California.
She was in Vegas with us.
Well, she ended up in Vegas.
Oh.
But Freya was stripped of her divinity, ran instantly.
And I all of a sudden became divine, 100% fully
she
divine.
Made the biggest rave in Vegas ever.
She kind of like, whoa! I mean, it was like too much.
And to top it off, she didn't know which one of the three men was the father of her child.
Yeah.
One was Loki, and the other two were teammates.
Yeah. So, to prevent him from writing the story, I took it out of his hands. And because this way I had control over how because she's going to need to know what happened when they meet again, because it's going to determine how she behaves. Because originally she was going to give up the child.
Right.
In that storyline, they actually made Loki into a decent guy.
Oh.
I did.
It was the decent version of Loki that you hear in the old stories, where he wasn't told douche.
Yeah. And technically in my other stories, even though his daughter hates it now, and
her other character's a daughter of Loki, who's a stage magician.
He's still the same guy I was writing. It's just from her perspective.
Yeah, it's now from a daughter versus a.
But this way, when I do, if I ever get to play that character again, she has. I mean, and literally through these other stories, she decided not to give him the child. Mm-hmm. Shit, Ragnarok's coming. I'm not gonna let this kid, she had a whole foster family set up, the whole thing, and then so she decided to keep the child, and so it's like in how it progressed, and her world is very real,
Right.
but she's not rigid, you know.
And besides, between your parentage of Freya and Loki, there's going to be enough dwarves and elves willing to cover and help because, hey, you're doing good for Freya's kid because Freya, you know, the dwarves love Freya. She's got a couple of half dwarf kids.
And we helped.
Oh yeah, you
remember,
saved
it's
the
Hildy's
entire
cousin.
Yeah.
It's Hildy's cousin. That's my nanny.
Yeah, they saved an entire village of trolls because in Scion it's the traditional Norwegian trolls.
Right.
If they're out during daylight, they die. So you know they made some serious inroads in friendship with the dwarf Asgardian relations, which is great. I love Scion. It's a great game.
We're gonna
It's White Wolf.
We'll have to post my stories.
Yeah,
for her.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's another way for a GM to reward a player is not tangible, like dropping experience in a bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Is the with Peter,
Mm-hmm.
you came up with your lady suitor. You've been rewarded with a little more spotlight time with her because that's you've helped solidify the story world that there are other people that you deal with on a regular basis.
And I'm sorry, that maneuver with
the triumphs.
taxi.
The fly me to the window. Come on. That was an awesome move.
Well, I'm sorry, and also with the Inquisitor, or what was the, not the Inquisitor.
Not the Inquisitor.
The whole showdown with,
when you were on the outside of the airship. Yeah.
It makes for
with the Justicar.
But when I started off with Peter, really was steampunk hero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is the reason why I actually threw in the magic that he doesn't know or didn't know about.
Which I love that idea of it's just a luck streak that the powers kick in.
Well, it's not. It's partly a luck streak, but it's partly a self boost that he doesn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but he just thinks everybody can do it. So it's also not one of those things where, you know, I'm so great and you're not. He just doesn't realize that other people don't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just your innate talent.
You know, so it's so one of the things that I love about the whole steampunk genre is the old-fashioned pulling off amazing, you know, cliffhanger hero stuff.
Yeah, the pulpiness.
Pulpiness, with, you know, going up to the top of the Zeppelin and, you know,
doing the swashbuckler stuff, you know.
Doing the taxi stuff.
And we're all sitting there biting our teeth saying, please roll good, please roll good. And then all of a sudden, oh no. And even when bad things happen, how does it spin off in the story? I mean, and then sometimes the dice just love you, and that's a good thing.
But you have your character's background up in your head, so you know, and that helps, I think.
And especially when, like, the Justicar, that you actually have a history, but oddly enough, he doesn't react to you like he recognizes you. It could be the years, it could be something else. He's just not right. Which that's a future story that might reveal itself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those are always fun.
One of the things, last game was actually a major change in his character that I don't know how it's going to go forward, is when we get back, and I was going to talk to about you and him, is that after the doctor, you know, fixes...
Because you blew up the stuff in the laboratory.
But after all of that stuff kind of like happens, is I'm actually going to need to go to the magic use and say, this used to, the bullet used to be in her.
You pulled it out of her.
Apparently I healed her, and how did I do that?
Was ist dies?
How did I do that? Because I know that wasn't something other people should be able to do.
Because you're now having that whole character arc of you realize the force is real, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, teach me more.
Well, and not even necessarily teach me more, but first is that, what is this?
Mm-hmm. Because you saved a life, and that's huge. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you had a half-naked woman in your lap while you're doing it, and that's a
Well, that happens all the time.
Yeah. You know, that's why in the 40s they taught us that whole shrink to black. Focus on an inanimate object across the room while there's a shadow and shrink to black. Because that
focus down to the shoes. As you say.
Something specific, like the coat on the chair, because it's implying he's coatless.
He's coatless.
You know what that means. I don't have to tell you.
No.
In case you have children in the audience, we don't have to say it, but you know.
But you know, he's taking off his coat.
His vest has been unbuttoned. Shit just got real. That's why the censor had his hand on the button. He's like, we can't show that. Okay, second, camera 2, focus on the clothes. But yeah, and it's basically to summarize, it's as a player, reinforce the world, and as a GM, reward your players for reinforcing the world.
Right.
Because
that's one of the it was because of the world, and also some of the GM clues that happened. Because when I went to start Visitor, he said, "Okay, how do you want to go?
Yeah.
Do you want to go on a rickshaw? Do you want to go on one of the or on one of the floating?" And he went, "Wow, I'm going to take the
And that's exactly why I asked, because your character, I'm like, well, is he doing this the Rico Suave way?
Right.
The Errol Flynn entrance? Or are you just taking, just walking through the mud?"
Right, but it was using those little bits of world detail where, wait a second, all of a sudden I'm in a ship that doesn't stay on
the ground. Yeah, you now have that third plane.
I can use that,
And dude, that was a sexy rock star move of, I'm going to go right up to the balcony with the car, and then you realize, something's not kosher in the scene here. Woman, get in the car! And then, of course, the bad guys rolled really well and got that shot off, and that's just... And part of that whole scene just happened due to dice rolls, It was the whole... Something was wrong. I didn't, as a GM, I didn't know exactly what was wrong yet until the dice went, and then you were even picking up on the cues that I was just throwing out a cue, and you're like, wait a minute, this ain't right. You've reinforced that this is not right to the point of it's tangible, and I'm picking up on this is not right. Give me more clues.
This is the first time I played Genesis, and I really like this system because it is very cooperative storytelling. You're not rolling to see whether you succeed,
hit or miss.
Or you're not rolling at a target.
Yeah.
You're rolling on of how things happen. So if you miss, there's a difference between not succeeding and failing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I really like about Genesis.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I love with the narrative dice, because, the whole fail forward concept, which writers have used forever, role players are finally kicking on that it's okay to get kicked in the chops if it's moving the story along. Hell, like Harry Dresden books. Your hero, by the halfway point of the book, has been beaten senseless by at least 2 different parties. One which he has no clue why. Jim Butcher?
No. I'm trying to... Only 2?
Oh, at least. In the early books. When you only had so many nemesis,
Well, no, because there was the vampires, there were the werewolves, there was the street gangs, there were the cops that occasionally just roughed them up.
Even his own support circle looked him down because you got his warden, who's constantly waiting to cut his head off at the moment's notice. And like with narrative dice,
I really like you. I feel really bad that I'm going to have to kill you because you're going to make me do it.
You killed your master with magic, and I know your master was a good guy. It's only because your mentor put you under his wing that you're still alive. So I'm going to have to do you eventually. And like narrative dice, every time a triumph would come up, boom! Here comes the warden to watch you do what you're doing, because you're now realizing, crap, I got the fuzzy mittens on. I can't do the big things because if I hurt somebody, he's going to cut my head off. And narrative dice are great about that. They give options.
Right.
And and like I've told everybody that I've played with, it's like you'll play one session, you'll be really uncomfortable, but finally you'll realize it's okay. You control your player and the good and the bad. So if you, and like with our Sunday Star Wars group we do here at the TGG, is a lot of times the group, when something bad happens, they will say, wouldn't it be great if blah? And I'll look at the player, I'm like, you cool with that? As long as you're cool with that, I don't want to railroad you into a bad situation, but if you're cool with that, I think that's a badass idea.
Right. Well, and again, with the system, you're able to fail with disadvantage, or
fail with advantage, or worse, you get triumph.
Fail with advantage, or succeed with disadvantage, so you have more of a spectrum.
So, like when you did your perception, you failed, but you had 3 advantage, so I could give you an important piece of information in the scene. You realize someone's kicking in her door inside the house. That's kind of important, but you may have missed it when you were looking for things outside the house. You were too concerned with her that it distracted you from the yard. You looked at her and realized, why has she got a chair braced against her door? Ladies don't do that in their own boudoir. And I'm a huge fan of the dice. Now that they've got a fantasy setting, I'm going to be interested in playing some of that to see how that works. Because a more D&D feel adventure game with the same narrative dice. That and I love in Terranoff. That's the setting. That's the generic setting they're using, which I wouldn't use it because it's too World of Warcraft tabletop gaming. Because you have faction of undead, faction of dragons, faction of evil magic users. It's the tropes, which tropes are good, but don't become stereotypes.
Right.
And you know that when you're a magic user, you can cast any spell you want in the spellbook as long as you're willing to risk it. Like with you guys, when you use your magic, sometimes it just doesn't work out like you intended. You know. Thankfully, we haven't had any really bad magic rolls, but there's some really bad things that can happen. Like if you ever saw the old show The Sentinel, the gentleman that had the 5 heightened senses because he's like a spirit warrior.
Right.
Where all of a sudden one day he's sick and takes basically like a Sudafed, and all of a sudden he gets like insane focused microscopic vision. Well, you try being a cop with microscopic vision, or all of a sudden you're hearing a bird chirping a block away and you're trying to hear the conversation happening right here. It's the massive feedback. And magic can do bad things. I mean, we've been really lucky with the magic. But, you know, in that system you could do like Harry Dresden with the I'm shooting a fireball. Well, you lost control. Because like in the Fate system for Dresden, do you choose to take the backlash or do you let the building burn? You know, it's one of those of, it's up to you how badly this gets. Because, you know, I'm cool with you surviving the fire, but the building burns. So that
opening to a book ever. The building was on fire and it wasn't my fault.
And that's one of the Harry Dresdens, if I recall.
Yep, he rescues puppies.
Yeah, when he was going after the
giant gorilla,
the flaming poop.
flaming shit.
Yeah, and all the monkeys come together with him and his brother and the blue beetle. That's not so blue.
Right.
So to make your world feel more real, you need dogs.
Yes.
Like Slobber the Mutt.
Yeah, Tilda's war dog mount. Slobber the Mutt.
Big difference between RPGs and movies and TVs is that RPGs should have more animals in them.
I agree.
You cannot do animals in movies because they're too hard to maintain throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
And with very few exceptions, you can't do anything with books because the booksellers do not allow any harm to come to them at all.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, it's kind of justifiable. So you don't want.
Yeah, you can turn off a lot of your audience that way.
You don't want cruelty to animals, you know, in your books and stuff like that. But when you're doing RPGs and it's just you and your friends, and you know, it's one of the things that's just absolutely amazing. But for example, if the zombie apocalypse happens, the best thing to have is a dog.
Yeah.
Because according to all of the zombie worlds that I know of anyway, the disease doesn't cross species.
Yeah, except for in one movie, the Will Smith I Am Legend, which has the most heart-rending scene ever.
Stop right there.
We're all going to stop there because we all just missed it up just talking about that scene. Yeah, that scene gets everybody with feels.
I haven't seen it.
But yeah, other than that, like World War Z, the book, not the bad movie, the book actually talks about how they train canine units where they'd have a small terrier who's got a vest with a camera and a speaker, so his carrier could talk to him. That could run through tunnels, do the terrier thing, with large breeds that would push the zombies over to crack their heads open. And that way the trainer can basically radio his pups to do things. And I thought that was great.
Even if they're not that well military trained, any pet that's going to be surviving that long would be able to smell a zombie way before you see it.
Or hear it.
Or hear it.
Yeah.
You know, would be able to get between you and it.
Endanger what they do naturally,
Because, I mean, you know, back before agriculture, that's what they did.
Yeah.
That was basically their job.
Yeah. Many tribes kept dogs around because that's your first line of defense.
Exactly.
They're the ones that are going to bark at the stranger danger.
We domesticated them kind of coexisting. You know, so it's just one of the things that
and in RPGs, that like I love the fact that when D&D came back out with the Beastmaster Ranger, because you have your classic World of Warcraft hunter with a pet.
Wolf.
Now, granted, I know how a lot of players felt they got cheaped because when it came out to not make the Beastmaster Uber, your act is to tell the dog to attack. So your dog will move with you, but it attacks or you attack. You don't both get attacked. But like in 4th edition D&D, they had this great thing where you and the attack beast are attacking simultaneously. The beast isn't hurting it, but it's distracting it, so you're getting the advantage because you're being harried from both sides.
Right.
Which I'm a huge fan of that.
Even though you only get one attack, you get the flank advantage.
Exactly, the flanking, which now is called combat advantage. But yeah, exactly. You get the flanking boost that, dude, I got a dog behind me and a guy in front of me with swords. My attention is diverted. But like Kelly with her halfling rogue wanted a dog, slobbered the mud.
I wanted a mount, so she finally got enough gold after recouping her losses.
When she gave away the gold to save her party to a dragon.
Yeah, that hurt so much for her.
Which, by the way, that made that scene so real when the rogue goes, "Take my gold but spare my friends." When the greedy rogue who's been stealing from her friends relentless.
I was not stealing from my friends. I have it's just that whenever I would divvy it up evenly and there was one extra left over, the banker gets it. Who was the banker? Me.
Remember that movie where the guys invented a program to shave a tenth of a cent? Totally not stealing from the company.
Why let the rogue be the banker?
Yes. We were doing some sort of steampunk western Wild West thing, and Aaron was game mastering. There was some bounty hunters, actually oddly enough after my character, and basically during a chase, one of our snipers pretty much blew the leader's leg off. The rest of the party pretty much died. But the leader of the adversaries got his leg blown off at the knee, and we brought him back to the airship, and he was recuperating. Oh no, we stole his ship after killing his.
As one does.
Obviously, it's your ship.
Right. And then basically we looted the ship, and in his safe there was basically all of his money, because nobody trusts banks, right?
Not
so
no
all
less.
of his money in this safe on his airship that we commandeered as penalty for shooting. So he's recuperating, and we've gotten the story, and I basically said, tell you what, you go back to England and you tell my cousin to bugger off. You tell everyone else to wave off, and I will give you my share of your money.
That's a completely sensible thing, because your character, from a sensible point of view, realized the hassle was worth more than the cash.
Well, and if things went right, I wouldn't have to worry about money.
Mm-hmm.
If things went wrong, it wouldn't matter, because that amount of money is not going to be helpful.
It's not going to help a dead man on Boot Hill.
Right, and it's also a character thing. It's one of the things.
And that makes your character feel real.
Right. One of the things that I had decided on with Peter is that he doesn't really care about money, because he always thinks he can get more if he needs it, which he can.
I totally played a character like that. Not that she didn't care about money, and it's not that she didn't know how money worked, but she was raised in like a temple, a shrine in Japan. So there was always money. I mean, it wasn't extravagant.
Right.
But she was taken care of.
But she didn't, she didn't think anything of, it's like, oh, well, here is all the money I have.
Yeah.
Because I don't need it.
Right.
Because
my worldly cares are taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
that didn't work so well.
That's actually the reason why I threatened to put the bounty on him in the arena. Because I don't, if that much money, you're gonna kill somebody over money. He's a good guy.
Do you want to be that guy?
You got a choice.
I know.
Here, you can have money, or I can use the exact amount of money.
As a GM, it was great watching the team conflict, because you're like, why are we killing the cow? We can get milk from the cow, and they're just like, I want the 3,000 scripts. Because they're young and impetuous, types.
Yeah, no, I don't understand why you guys want to kill the stone man.
I know, I liked the stone man.
It was.
I made him to be that lovable Rowdy Piper type, that he's rough and uncouth, but he's really lovable.
I don't understand why they want to kill him.
Because the bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush and 5 in the airship.
Actually, to give them the benefit of the doubt, they don't have money.
Yeah.
Okay, but the thing
And
is,
they saw what they thought was an incredible amount of money
okay, so
for
they
doing
made
something.
more money than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
buckets
It's
more.
night.
Yeah.
Right.
So why do they need to kill him now?
Because, but it is a good point. The mad scientist scrimps and scrapes for his tonics and chemicals, and the Aethermancer barely has gotten by his whole life.
Right.
So you see that big nest egg, and you're like, oh, this is the big score, when it's really not that big of a score.
Right.
I mean,
And
if I were playing a different type of character, it would be, well, someone's going to kill him and get the bounty. It might as well be us. But
And I can tell you guys, now that we've passed that scene, the 3,000 was to stop him from getting to the arena, and once you got him there was no payout. I kind of tried to hint at that, but once the group was so dead set on knocking him off, I'm like, find out the hard way. You'll feel bad in the morning.
Well, and not only that, but we'd also piss off the major mafia in town.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know that at the time.
That's a really bad idea.
That's a really, I mean,
all of a sudden, he would find all the costs.
I'm enough of a con man to know you just don't do that.
Because do you want to piss off the mafia when you're a mad scientist getting chemical supplies that you don't watch the whole time getting on your ship?
I don't think he's so much the mafia person as he's the union boss.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's definitely more of the business angle as opposed to the organized crime angle.
Organized crime is business.
Yeah. It's a different kind of business.
I hope I've talked him out of raising that entire ghetto.
Sort of like, think the butcher at the end of Gangs of New York, not the butcher in his early years when he was the street hood, when he realizes the true power is in the whole, Conan angle of flesh is more powerful than steel. I can have all the people do my dirty deeds for me now. But yeah, that's we've gone off the res. Just a little. So that's probably a good place to wrap it up there.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.
Do you remember Shane?
Shane.
One of my fosters? He went to the same school that AJ did, only several years older.
Did he have the kind of like scruff?
Sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Only when he didn't shave.
But anyway, he's in the Army. He's stationed in El Paso. He hasn't found a gaming group since he's left Tucson. And since he's in El Paso, which is only 5 hours away, he is interested in coming into town once a month. It would be on a Saturday to game. I'm not interested in ever playing one of Aaron's games again for a long, long time. Do you have the time in your schedule to run another once a month Saturday?
I probably can. What system do we want to play?
We don't know. He hasn't gamed in 10 years. So, whatever. I mean, he was also a much more story-based gamer than a systems-based gamer.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I played most often with was Aaron's White Wolf Vampire game. He was the one that is playing. It was towards the end of the game where I was basically playing three sides against each other. My spy character.
As werewolf does.
And well, this was vampire, but yeah, I was my own little. Anyway, no one really knew. In theory, no one really knew what my motives were. I thought my motives were very clear, but I can't help it if they're dumb.
You were a secret fifth column.
Yeah, kind of, and but there was this one time where basically towards the end game, people pretty much knew that I was working with many different vectors going on. But one of the things that our prince had done is sent me into Mexico to spy on the Sabbat. And so they knew that I was working with some people in the Sabbat, but they didn't actually know how closely I was working with them and which side I was really on. And I didn't want to tell them
They're cousins.
I wasn't really with any of the sides. I was on my own side. But basically, with the Sabbat, they did the flesh crafting and to the point where they could make people look like other people. It was not just like the schlachtas and the. So basically, they said, oh well, it's like, oh, we'll just call Jade and see what see if she has the skinny on it. And metagame, everyone had a certain set of data, and they call ring. It's like, hello. And someone flat out asked, does Ashley have any agents in town or any doppelgangers in town? And I went...
You said that over an open phone.
Right. Well, that's fine, because my answer was, I don't think so, not that I know of, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to be cautious and, blah, 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 blah. And then I hung up. And Shay just looks at me and she goes, God damn it, she still hasn't lied. that was one of the things that I did for my character, is I never lied.
You pulled the fairy bit where it's always the
useful part of the truth.
Yeah. The most deadly part.
The useful part of the truth. But yeah, he's very story oriented rather than throw the dice and dungeon roll.
Yeah. Tabletop wargamer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can, because AJ and them were wanting, basically third Sunday is going to be the Star Wars one.
Okay.
Because they did a one-shot and fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Even though there's the great betrayal at the end.
Is that a Sunday?
That's a Saturday.
It's going to be a Saturday.
It's a Saturday night.
You said Sunday.
Sorry, I meant Saturday. Yeah, Sundays are booked.
Because basically he'll come in, he'll arrange to get off a little bit early on Friday, come in Friday, stay the night Friday night, we'll game on Saturday, and then he'll stay the night Saturday night and go home Sunday.
Okay, go ahead and start up like a Facebook group, and we'll start mashing ideas and seeing what genre and...
So for the nonce, I'll do you, me, Shane, and AJ. I'll include James because he's only in every third week or so.
That way too you can keep up with the story.
Yeah.
Because hey, you can always listen to the podcast and hear what the story is. Because that's one thing I got about podcasting is nice that you can, I forgot what we did last month, listen to the night before. Like even on this one, I pulled up the Twitch from the week before. It's like, what did we end exactly on? So that way I can go right to the cliffhanger ending and we start there. 8th man from Zanzibar.